across Texas. The issue is.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas.
And I'm Greg Krugen in Houston, and this is Texas, The Issue Is.
The issue of school choice is back on the front political burner. Governor Greg Abbott saying a special session will be held in October. His effort to try again on this controversial issue now includes a call to advocate from the pulpit and a promise to punish any no vote by a Republican in the primaries. So I spoke to State Representative James Talarico, a Democrat from Round Rock, a former teacher, about Abbott's voucher reboot and that ballot box threat.
You know, I think Greg Abbott should try to run on the merits of his policies and not by political threats. To me, that's a sign of weakness. That means you don't have good ideas if you're having to threaten members with a primary challenge.
Now, there are some polls that say that people do support the idea of school choice, and they would like to have their tax dollars follow their kids to wherever they want to put their kids. Do you agree with that?
No, the polling I've seen is when folks actually learn what vouchers do, that they redirect funding from our public schools to these unaccountable private schools. They're generally opposed to the idea. You know, Texans love their public schools. Public education is enshrined in our state's constitution, and there's nothing more Texan than Friday Night Lights.
The governor said we're not turning off the lights on Friday nights. Do you buy that?
I don't. You know, we are 43rd in the nation in per student education funding. Texas is one of the bottom states in terms of funding for our schools. And so any dollar that you are giving to a private school is a dollar that's not being put into our public schools to raise teacher pay, to lower class sizes, to improve student outcomes. That's what Texans want, regardless of their political party.
Now, some people do like the idea of school choice, and that my tax dollars follows my kid to the school I want. But the plan that came out of the Senate during the session and the plan that the governor's been pitching called an education savings account, that's not the same thing, is it?
These misleading slogans like school choice are disingenuous because it's not school choice, it's the school's choice. And that's a problem for me, because if my tax dollars are going to go to educating the next generation, those tax dollars should be educating everybody.
The idea also that was pitched during the session was creating a new line item budget item and essentially a new entitlement. Do you find it ironic that a Republican is calling for a brand new entitlement program that maybe will only help just a few?
Yeah, you know, I find it ironic that Republicans are willing to give our tax dollars to these private schools that don't have to meet any of our state's accountability requirements.
Are you worried the acquittal of Paxton, the Attorney General, in the Senate could factor into the debate as it gets to the House, and that teacher pay raises could be wrapped up into this voucher education savings account idea and be pushed through because of the acquittal?
I think it's pretty obvious that the Senate acquitted Ken Paxton because they were bought and paid for by some wealthy special interests. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, before he presided over that trial, took $3 million from 2 billionaire megadonors. Those 2 billionaire megadonors are the exact same megadonors that are pushing this voucher scam. And it looks like Greg Abbott is going to try to do the same thing. You know, thankfully in the Texas House, our House Speaker, Dave Phelan, still allows the members to run the body and doesn't try to influence the outcome like Dan Patrick does in the Senate.
If a voucher plan is wrapped up into the school teacher pay raise that didn't happen, could you support that?
No, I could not. I know that even though it may start out small, session after session, it'll grow until it takes over the public education budget.
So with all that said, what's your message to House members, the Republican House members, in light of what's happened in the Senate with the acquittal?
You know, my message to my friends on the other side of the aisle in the Texas House is to stay committed to principle over politics.
Well, certainly that is a very big ask, considering the volatile political climate right now under the Capitol Dome, which is why my word for that interview is homework. Stephen, what's your word for this?
Hyphenated word, held hostage.
That's twice you've gone hyphenated. Greg, what's your word?
Rudy, my word is showdown.
You bet. And with that, we will take a break and then come back to mark up the governor's school choice assignment. The Texas Trio is back to discuss the upcoming special session on school choice. Now, before the Paxton acquittal, I was thinking the idea was DOA in the House. Now I think with the GOP infighting looking more like a political reboot of the Spanish Inquisition, things have certainly changed. Greg, what do you think? Vouchers passing in the House, even money, or sure thing?
Rudy, even money at best with a hard lean towards snake eyes. Now, we know school choice didn't muster enough support in the regular session, despite the polling, despite Abbott's crusade, and despite not-so-veiled threats from Patrick. So what's changed? Well, instead of standing up against Ken Paxton's demonstrable corruption, Dan Patrick and Senate Republicans decided to stick it to the House and Speaker Dade Phelan. I can't figure out how that flips rural Republicans into yes votes for vouchers, unless the hard right plays some pretty nasty hard ball with incumbents. Something like, you voted to impeach Paxton and now you're voting against choice, and that's plenty to label you a rhino. So expect a well-funded opponent in the primary if you don't vote our way.
Yeah, there's got to be some hard discussions in the home districts, which is why my word was homework. But as I pointed out with Representative Talarico, the school choice plan pitched on the campaign trail by the governor and earlier this year out of the Senate, not really school choice. Come on. Stephen, it reminds me of some voodoo economics used to spin that property tax plan out of the legislature in the previous special session. So who do you think gets paid off with a funding promise this time? Rural Republicans like Greg mentioned?
Well, the focus is going to be on those rural Republicans because you have to look at it. Already the governor and the Senate, for that matter, is behind the 8 ball because the House already said we're not doing this. And now you have the infighting, the civil war that some Republicans may not want to acknowledge as a thing, but it will be a thing, especially since Ken Paxton has been airing his grievances recently. It's going to come down to, will House members say, you know what, Senate, you made us look bad, we're not on board with you. They already weren't on board. Of course, like Greg mentioned, there's going to be a threat of being primaried, but you have to remember, the House and the Senate already don't get along, if you want to be really honest about it, and so House members may feel more emboldened, I know that's a word we've been using, as to saying, I'm going to stand on what I believe in.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but Greg Talarico, he is a hard no, even if teacher pay is held hostage and wrapped into a voucher plan. Do you think some Democrats, though, will cave in?
Rudy, I'm betting not a single Dem will vote for choice, even though polling shows a supermajority of urban black Democrats actually want it. That means if Speaker Phelan wants to drive a spike into Abbott and Patrick's pet issue, all he needs is 11 or 12 Republicans to vote no, and choice dies again. Now think about this. The House has something like 35 committees, and Phelan appoints all the chairmen. At this stage of the game, it would take a whole-scale mutiny of the Speaker's leadership team. Do either one of you see that happening? Because I don't.
Yeah, and I think that they just have to keep on saying, this is not school choice. This isn't your tax dollars following your kids. Stephen, some Republican House members, though, have posted on social media that they want other issues in the governor's call, such as a ban on people from unfriendly countries like China from owning property in Texas, very controversial, somewhat, and pumping more resources into the border crisis that's underway. Is that likely, or do you think the governor wants a one and done?
The governor wants a one and done, and I don't believe he's going to get the one and done. Will school choice pass in some form or fashion before the end of this calendar year? Maybe, but the governor, I think, is going to have to call at least a second special session. I don't see it passing in the first one.
What do you think, Greg? Real quick, one and done or buffet?
I don't know. I will say this. Phelan better show some strength. Any degree of weakness will be viewed by Patrick as blood in the water, and a coordinated campaign is already underway with multiple Republican county committees hastily voting censure votes against the speaker.
Yeah, a lot of sharks already swimming underneath the dome. That's a wrap for this issue for now. You can see this interview or any of our other past interviews by going to our YouTube pages.
And visit our social media sites to continue the conversation. The Texas Trio will be back next week.
And we will be continuing to monitor the border crisis, seeing if there will be a government shutdown in the federal government. And will the presidential campaign heat up, or will it be sacked by college football? Let us know what you think the issue is.